So, assalamu alaikum. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We've left it off at this stage, and here we're just going to do a straight seam just to close the whole of the salwar off. So that's like self-explanatory, isn't it? And now if you try and get these seams aligned, just a couple of hints I would give you on this. Okay, if you're working on, if you've got an overlocker, I would always recommend overlocking. If you haven't got an overlocker, then what you would do is make sure that this seam is a little bit wide, because a lot of the fabrics do fray a lot and you will have the fabric fraying too quickly. And the other thing that I would request everyone to do is to seam on top of that. So you know, all this excess fabric is stuck to the top side of the belt, and that will stop a lot of the bulking. Now we don't actually need it that badly in this because this is overlocked, but if you haven't got an overlocker, then this is essential, because before you know it, the threads will come out to such an extent that they will end up, you will end up losing the fabric. Okay, so this type of seam is very good done on necklines. When we go on towards making a kameez, I'll explain that. And these are just all for safety, really, you know, for comfort. And so what you're doing is you're turning all the excess towards the top side. It's just common sense. Even if you haven't overseamed this, try and make sure that, you know, your excess fabric is folded towards the top side rather than towards the bottom side. But everybody has different ways of, I always find it easier to sew from top side going towards down and not the opposite way. Now that's because even if there is a slight bit of unevenness in this crutch seam, it'll come out. And we want to try and match those. So. If you want to get yourself a chair, grab yourself a chair. Now this one doesn't actually need overlocking because it's an edge which is already, you know, it's not a unsalvaged edge, it's a salvaged edge. That's what they call this, salvage. Okay. Then we're just doing closing off the salwar. So at this point you want to decide what you know, the width that you want to leave your poncha, and the best thing to do is either to pin this or to mark it. Okay, so if we're gonna pin it, then we're gonna get hold of the other side as well. Make sure that these points, make sure that they're together.
Daddy.
I'll just pin that. Now, if you have any, if you've cut it right, then you shouldn't have any, you know, one fabric more or the other. But if there is, because this fabric is stretchy and it's on a bias, you can actually sort of compact it into this area. So what we're going to do is we're just going to, can you see that it's meeting at the crutch point? And what we're going to do is we're going to hold it taut so that it's just all level. And we're going to place it. And once we've got the seam going, you can take the needle out. Now hold this slightly pulled, because otherwise what you're going to end up having is that there is a lot of pull in this fabric because it's on a bias, and if you just sew it normally, when you pull on the thread, it'll end up all breaking. So the other way to do this is on a zigzag stitch, a slight zigzag on the smaller machine that you saw me do last time. Yeah, I don't know if you remember that far back when we did Usman salwar. Once we've reached, now you don't have to open these seams up, but if you do, that's entirely up to you. It makes no difference in the wearing. And if you grab hold of this, if there's any unevenness in this, then make sure, say for instance, if it's coming like this, you understand, you've got excess fabric, then what you can do is just grab hold of it and you can incorporate it into the whole of the salwar so that it's not, unless it's absolutely massive, then you've gone somewhere wrong in the cutting, which you're going to have to take it out prior to doing this seam. But if you cut it according to the way I've showed you, then this shouldn't be a problem. Now the one thing I always recommend to everyone, right, at this stage it's very easy to go around the whole of the seam, okay, and for safety and for precaution I would always say that, okay, my seam isn't exactly right and it's a little bit more, do a double seam, because you know this seam does tend to tear very quickly. And the last thing you want, you know, once you've sewn a salwar and if you end up having rips in it or tears in it, I can almost guarantee you that you will not go take it back to the machine and do a double seam. So at this stage, it's going to literally take you seconds to do, and it's going to add value, you know, lifetime to your salwar. And not many people will do this. A machinist will definitely not do this for you. Now there is a slight bit of unevenness in there. Just one point. When you turn this over, there isn't as much pull on this, so what you have to do is you have to slightly notch it just to make it sit better. When you notch towards the point of the scissor. Don't cut it like this, because if the scissor slips you will end up cutting into it and it happens very, very easily.